Hello, everybody. Tuesday night, and I thought we'd get back on arpeggios tonight. I had only mentioned and talked about the preliminary exercises for arpeggios, which were the ones that treated the long fingers to black keys in key of B, a B major triad, and the E flat, which we never started on the actual root. Okay, so let's have that discussion. Now, first of all, arpeggios have a couple of concepts a little bit different from scales. And there are four basic arpeggios that I want to talk about. And they are, I'll post this at PianoAt10.com, C major, B flat major, and then E flat major, and B major, okay? They're kind of the, C major is just all white keys. It's like the scale. I don't think it's the one you want to introduce things with, but it is one of the, what I call the families, the four basics. But there are exceptions to this because you can have thumbs on black keys. If we play G sharp major, it's all black keys, all black keys. So we have to use the thumbs on black keys. There are no scales without at least two white keys, and that's why in a scale you don't have to worry about the thumb being on a black key. It can always be on a white key. But with arpeggios, that changes a little bit, although we still try to maintain that, only because of the way the hand is built, and the thumbs like white keys. So let's take a look at a couple of them and see what we've got here. Oh, another quick thing. Because you can have extremes with scales too. But whenever the hands go up the keyboard, remember something. The left hand high ends up really with the second finger higher than the thumb. And when the left hand goes really low, we end up with the second finger lower than the thumb in some instances. The whole wrist disposition changes for extremes. Okay? Now remember that I told you that I didn't like scales and arpeggios because the fingers kept changing. I had a 2 there, now there's a 4 there, and we'll address that, and I'll show you why I should not have been confused, because somebody should have just explained to me that substitute fingers are being used. I want to do the arpeggios where I did them like the scales, where they're on, you actually see the keyboards and the fingers. But let's look at C major. It's all white keys. All right, let's look at the right hand. That's what's written on my page. And I'll show you where that, well, actually, yeah, that's an interesting, the 2 octaves, because they're interesting because you can play them in 3s. You can hear the pineapples. Or you can play them in 4s. Do you hear the difference? Now, how am I making that one louder? Well, I'm doing my dropping the wrist, as I've been saying all along about rhythm. A C arpeggio is not a specific thing. It depends on the rhythm. Again, if it was cellos, and it's all in the wrist. All of this stuff is in the wrist. Now, let's look at it very, very carefully. This is not what's happening. We don't have that, okay? We don't have that. We don't have a crossing under, stay here, get the thumb up there. None of that's happening, okay? And I'm going to kind of confine it to no pedal. If you look at the wrist, you'll see it's really plotting where those fingers are going to be. There's that rotation. So, and that's the fingering for the root position C major. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 5, 4, 3. Now remember, the 5 is a substitute. Because if I were to keep going, The 5 wouldn't be used there. It would be the 1 going back to the C. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 5, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 5, if I had to keep going. The left hand, and don't ask me why we always go up and down. You should be just as easily go down than up. Now, the left hand on this C major family thing, it depends on the hand for some people. Some people like, I'll do it going down first so you can see it kind of like the right hand going up. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 5. 1, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1. I happen to like 4. That's just my finger of choice. Probably something to do with my hand, just the size of it. And I like 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, 5, 4, 2, 1. All right? I might like it because later on, if you have to do the 7th chord, and we're not talking about those right now, but I will show you why I might like 4. We don't play those in the left hand normally, but 4 would be, of course, the only finger to really use there. And perhaps that's why I like 4. And I'll show you in the B flat chord, it's the same thing, the arpeggio. So that would be the fingering for that. If I came up from the bottom, it would be 5, 4, 3, 2, or 3, depending on which one you like more. Now, with the flat, there's probably a bigger argument for the 4. And I don't have this on the page, but it is a variation. That there's a bigger argument for 4 there. 3 would be a little bit bigger stretch. Certainly doable, but 4 just works better on that one. Now, when you put them together, and they're in unison, meaning both C's and both E's. Now, I did 3 octaves. Let me do the 2 I have on the page where I wrote them. That's kind of the anchor. Then that wrist goes up. When you do them slowly, you got to be aware that you have to move. That wrist has to keep moving. You go too slow, there's a tendency to stop and then do this kind of thing, which you don't want to do. Okay? It's really so much in the wrist, and it does take time to get used to. There's no question about it. Now, let's look at the E flat, because we did talk about that one. Now, this is the thing that drove me crazy. The thumbs were here, then the 4 2s, then the thumbs, then the 4 2s, then the thumb. We talked about that. Well, if you're going to do it from root position, you have to start in the E flats. And this is what I was shown, and this is what confused me. I was shown like 3 or 2 starting there. And then there'd be a 4 on the B flat when I start on 2 on the E flat, excuse me. The E flat. Well, 4 should start on the E flat. That would really be the smart thing to do. And 2 here. And that would be consistent. However, if you're starting there, it's perfectly legitimate to put a substitute finger for a minute. It's a little closer. The 4 is a little extreme to start on. But let's look at the right hand alone. 4, 1, 2. See, the crux of that right hand one is this. Chord can be easily played. That 4 would be the 4 on that chord, but you're not playing that. You're not playing those 2 notes. And I probably have a tendency when I'm going to go over and back to use 3 or 2 because it's convenient. Now, again, if you're playing it in 3s, okay, oops. If you're playing it in 4s, it's tougher to do it in 4s because you're landing on kind of random fingers. You put the pedal down. If you had to do it, you could use your pedal to help phrase where those groups are. And the same with the triplets. Now the left hand, you start with, I'll do it where I wrote it. And that, again, they put 3-1 very often. But what's funny is you're not going to play 3-1. Watch. There it is, 2-1. And he's kind of funky because this part's rather simple. Then you go over 4-2. 2 is still used here. And then when people end, they don't use 2, they use 3. But they wouldn't if they had to keep going. Okay? So, my suggestion is when you're learning them, use the kosher finger. Use the one it's supposed to be. Use the 4. And use the 2. People end it like that. I used to see that in the book. 3s. I'm like, how come 3s? I mean, you do them long enough, yeah, you'll probably end up doing that. Okay, let's talk about B major. You can see though why this one is easy that way. It's the ends. It's where you're stopping that creates the headache. Okay, let's take a look at B major. That one's kind of nice because it starts on the B's with 5 and 1. Now 5 is not the right finger. 5 is the substitute. But if you're going to start, it would be, the thumbs would be the kosher finger. Then the 3-2. Then the thumbs. Then the 3-2. Then the thumbs. But if we're going to turn around, 5 is there. Obviously it's that one I never questioned. That one I never worried about. It was clear that that was not the right finger. It was in the other guys with 2s and 3s, and that drove me crazy. So anyway, this one's pretty quickly learned. That's why it's one of the first ones I teach. In fact, this is the first first arpeggio I teach kids because it's a very simple one to keep track of. Everybody feels a little skittish in the black keys. It's like walking a tightrope. I know that. There's the possibility of falling off. Okay? That's why people think C is easier. You can't fall off the E onto another key, but you can fall off that to another key. But in terms of remembering the notes and it being comfortable for the hand, B major, I think, is the most comfortable arpeggio of all of them. And again, you can see that it's all in the wrist. If I go to C, and then I go back to B, it doesn't look much different, except the landmarks. The black keys act as landmarks. So this is also one that's pretty easy to do them going that way because it's the same fingers and same black keys. So, okay, it's pretty simple to do that. But if you're practicing it slowly and carefully, practice it in 3s. That's the easiest one to practice at first. Those 2 B's here are a big deal. You make it there comfortably, you're going to be okay. Then try it in 4s, but that's a lot tougher because it's going to be the bottom key, then the 3 and 2 here, and then the 3 and 2 here again, and then the one you started on. Oh, and if you pedal it, you can kind of help it along a little bit. Okay, now, the B flat. Let's take a look at that one. Right hand alone. The crux of the B flat arpeggio are these 3 notes. And clearly it's 1, 2, 4, not 3. So that one's pretty obvious. And 4 comes on the B flat. So again, to do it kosher, you should start on the 4. But again, nobody's probably going to use that 4 to stop and turn around on. They're going to use 2 or 3. So again, substitute finger will obviously be used there in that context when you stop or start on it. The left hand's a little dicier in this one, and this is where I differ from most pianists, I would say. Now, I don't know. I don't talk to enough pianists to know, and they might do it my way too. The finger that seems to make the most sense is a 3 on that B flat. Well, I use 4. What can I tell you? I use 4. Not when I go over. I use a substitute finger. If I kept going, I would use 4. But then once I get there and I only have to go up to the other B flat, I'll probably put a 3 on it. It's just easier to rotate into that 3 to come back down. 4 would be overkill. 2 would be all right, except I just used 2. Kind of nice using a slightly different finger. It's also, 3 is the longest finger, so probably why I do it. Okay, but a lot of people use 3. How does it change the world? Well, you can start with both 3s, substitute fingers. Well, no, correct in the left hand if you like 3, and substitute in the right hand. Then what comes together? 4 and 3, if you like 3. That's probably the other reason I like 4, because that way 4 is always coming together on the B flats. Now, that would be for a longer run of the B flat in that case. And that way it would always be 4s together, which is probably why I like the 4. I haven't really thought it out that much in the past. I know I use 4. And it's just automatic. My hand just seems to like that. So anyway, this is the book. I'm going to write some fingers in, and the substitute. I'll write S substitute for a finger, and I'll write where there's an option 4 and 3. I'll write the option with the one that I would choose on top, and the one below it, or well, you'll know from the score. And I would try them. They're not that hard. Now, some people suggest to do arpeggios, you try this. I might agree with it. I'm not sure, though. It's just too forced. You want to keep it going. Perhaps just going up and getting comfortable with it. I have a friend. He plays piano in cocktail lounges and stuff, and he can do a beautiful arpeggio up, but he can't do it coming down. Okay, so when you're practicing them, practice it just going up, left hand too. Just do that much of it, and then practice it just going down. Just practice them one direction. Remember, like scales, you almost never see these things in their perfect form like this in a piece. One other caveat to be careful of before I wrap up. Very often we have to play these chords. And by the way, these are only the root positions. Although, you see, the inversions, well, there are fingerings for the inversions, and I'll get around to those. But if you can do these arpeggios, the inversions, there's nothing to them. They end up being things you played here. But my caveat is this, that sometimes you need to play these things where you're just going up a few notes. Like, there you can use that for B flat, because you're not extending the arpeggio. There you can use thumbs on black keys, the whole thing, because you're not exceeding the octave. An arpeggio is really exceeding the octave, moving up beyond the octave, and you got to have a workable way to have that happen. Okay, so an arpeggio will work if you know the concepts. let's say I had to play from, I'm trying to think of an example of something you might see. Let's say you had to play from, well, again, you're going to use the arpeggio. Well, let's say you had to play this. Just those 5 notes with one hand. Well, you're not going to use 1, 4, 2, 1, and then go over with 2. You're going to use 5. You're going to do that. The 5 is going to be used. And before, remember I told you that the 5 can come on black keys with the other guys? If you had to do that, you're going to just put the fingers that are most comfortable. Okay? So arpeggios depend on, get good at doing these, and the ones on my page here, get good at doing these, and you will not have problems. The end of Claire de Lune does this. Sorry. Yeah. Now watch this arpeggio in the left hand. See it? It's a 6-note arpeggio. It's like the B Flat Arpeggio. Those are the best fingers for it. Then, that's the next one. Then I forget, there's another one here. Now that's not a standard arpeggio, but then he does. So he's got a whole bunch of arpeggios in the left hand. If you know the concepts of arpeggio playing, it becomes very easy to come up with a really workable fingering. So another one that does 7th chords in that, and I'm believe it or not, I'm actually learning this piece. I've never actually learned it. Is a part that goes. Okay, and that one, again, the concepts. Now 5 is going over there. So it's kind of an odd thing. Then later in the piece, he's got this another arpeggio-like. It's not an arpeggio. And it's this vaulting thing, but it's based around the knowledge. It's all black keys, by the way. It's based around your knowledge of when to move things to get to notes on time. There's no, like I said, you're probably never going to see an arpeggio straight. Well, maybe in a Liszt piece, you know, you'll see a Schumann, the concerto. He ends with, and then, okay, he ends with that big arpeggio, but it's broken. Yeah, I forget what it is. Boom. Yeah, he breaks it at one point into this other thing. But it's a straight arpeggio. It's pretty straight. And that's the C arpeggio. And family-wise, the A minor plays just like the C arpeggio. So anyway, remember to go to PianoAt10.com and download the resource, Book of Arpeggios 4 Basic. Okay? I think I called it 4 Basic Arpeggios. Anyway, you'll find it. It's in the description for the video. Okay, so when words fail, music speaks.